It was a typical Wednesday night, uneventful, quiet, just like the countless others Lisa and I had spent together over the past 12 years. She was upstairs in the shower, humming softly as the water ran, her voice occasionally breaking into a familiar melody. The sound used to comfort me. Tonight, though, it felt distant. I stood in the kitchen, tidying up the remains of our dinner, a simple spaghetti dish I'd thrown together while she talked about her day. Her phone buzzed on the counter, its blue light glowing insistently. It wasn't unusual for her to leave it lying around while she showered. She never had anything to hide, or so I thought. The screen lit up with a notification, and without thinking, I glanced at it. Just a reflex, really. But the words stopped me cold. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Same place. The sender's name? Chase. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Who the hell was Chase? My hands went cold, trembling slightly as I reached for the phone. I wasn't the paranoid type. Lisa and I had always trusted each other. She'd leave her phone around, unlocked, and so would I. We'd built our relationship on mutual respect. But this? This was something else. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a coworker, a harmless joke taken out of context. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I hesitated. Did I really want to open Pandora's box? If I unlocked her phone, there was no going back. But the words burned into my mind, can't wait to see you again. Again. The pit in my stomach deepened as I tapped the screen. Her passcode hadn't changed, our anniversary date, 0812. The home screen greeted me, neat and organized as always. Lisa loved order. It was one of the things I admired about her. But now, it felt like a mask hiding something darker. I navigated to her messages, heart pounding so loudly I was sure she'd hear it upstairs. There it was, a string of texts between her and Chase. My chest tightened as I read through them, each word a dagger to the life I thought we had. Chase, last night was amazing. I can still taste you. Lisa, you're insatiable. But you know I can't stay long tonight. He'll get suspicious. I had to stop reading. The words blurred as anger, disbelief, and pain crashed over me like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a flirtation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my wife, planning another night with this man, in my absence, while I sat downstairs cleaning up the mess from the dinner I cooked. Lisa's laughter echoed from upstairs, light and carefree. She was completely unaware of the storm brewing below. My hands tightened into fists as I set the phone back on the counter, careful to leave it exactly where she had left it. I stared at it, willing myself to calm down. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each more chaotic than the last. Who was Chase? How long had this been going on? Was I blind? Or was she just that good at lying? I replayed the past few months in my mind, searching for signs I might have missed. Lisa had been more distant lately, brushing off my attempts at affection with excuses about work stress or being tired. Our intimacy had dwindled to almost nothing, and when I brought it up, she'd roll her eyes and mutter something about how men always made everything about themselves. I had believed her. I had trusted her. And now, I felt like a fool. The water shut off upstairs, and the sound jolted me back to the present. My heart raced as I grabbed a dish towel and pretended to be drying my hands. Lisa's footsteps padded softly down the stairs, and a moment later, she appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. "Hey," she said with a smile, oblivious to the storm raging behind my eyes. "What are you doing just standing there?" I forced a smile, hoping she couldn't see through it. "Nothing. Just cleaning up." She walked over to her phone, picking it up and glancing at the screen. I watched her carefully, searching for any hint of guilt or hesitation. But she was a master of composure. If she was hiding something, she didn't let it show. "Anything interesting?" I asked casually, nodding toward her phone. Lisa looked up, her expression neutral. "Nope. Just a message from work. I'll deal with it tomorrow." Work. The lie came so easily, so naturally, that it took everything in me not to confront her right then and there. Instead, I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. "Don't stay up too late," she said, kissing me on the cheek before heading back upstairs. I stood there, frozen, as her footsteps faded. The scent of her shampoo lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of the woman I thought I knew. Who was this person sharing my home, my bed, my life? And what was I going to do about it? For the first time in 12 years, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. I waited until Lisa was asleep, her steady breathing filling the silence of our bedroom. Each exhale sounded like a taunt, daring me to dig deeper into the cracks she'd hidden so well. My heart hammered in my chest as I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her. Her phone sat on the nightstand, the glow of the charging light almost mocking me. The room was dark except for the faint blue glow from the screen as I picked it up. My thumb hesitated over the home button. Did I really want to do this? What if I was wrong? What if Chase was just some overly familiar colleague? But the text I'd seen earlier replayed in my mind. "Can't wait to see you again tonight. Same place." No, I wasn't wrong. I unlocked her phone using the passcode I'd known for years. She never thought to change it, another sign of how careless she had become. Or maybe she thought I trusted her too much to ever check. The message thread with Chase was still open. I scrolled upward, skimming through their history. It wasn't hard to find the truth. Chase wasn't just some coworker. He was the coworker, the one she mentioned in passing as really nice during dinner conversations. The one she had to stay late with during meetings. Tall, athletic, and confident, Chase fit the archetype of someone who could lure someone like Lisa away with ease. The messages between them weren't just intimate, they were cruel. "Chase, how does he not notice how miserable you are? Must be blind." "Lisa, he's not blind, just boring. So predictable. You're the only exciting thing in my life." "Chase, well, get used to it, because I'm not letting you go." Each word hit harder than the last. Boring. Predictable. Was that really how she saw me? I'd thought we were building something together, a life of stability, love, trust. But apparently, that wasn't enough for her. It didn't stop there. Their messages hinted at trips they'd taken, thinly veiled under work conferences. A romantic getaway to Napa. A weekend in Chicago. She even mentioned using our shared credit card to book a hotel for one of their rendezvous. My hands tightened around the phone as I read on. The worst part was how they mocked me. "Lisa, he didn't even notice when I bought a new dress for the trip. He just said I looked nice and moved on." Chase, classic. "Let me guess, he was watching the game or something." Lisa, "Pretty much. But don't worry, the dress looks better on the floor anyway." I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I couldn't. I had to keep reading. I had to know how deep this betrayal went. Hours passed as I combed through her texts, emails, and calendar entries. Each discovery painted a clearer picture of the life she had been leading behind my back. Dinner reservations at upscale restaurants I'd never heard of. Charges for expensive gifts she claimed were for friends or family. Hotel stays that didn't align with any trips I was aware of. She wasn't just cheating, she was funding their affair with our money. My money. The savings account we had worked so hard to build together was slowly being drained to finance their escapades. My mind raced with questions. When had this started? How long had I been oblivious? Was I really so naive to think she was just overworked, just tired, just stressed? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the dark living room, the phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. My thoughts spiraled into rage, hurt, and humiliation. Every laugh we'd shared, every tender moment, felt tainted now. The woman I thought I knew had been wearing a mask. By morning, I had pieced together a timeline. The affair started about 6 months ago, around the time she began coming home later than usual. She'd chalked it up to new projects and office politics, and I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed more than just messages. Lisa was too good at deflecting, spinning situations to her advantage. If I came at her now, she'd deny everything, maybe even twist it to make me look like the bad guy for invading her privacy. No, I needed something irrefutable. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, I made my decision. I needed help. A professional. Later that day, I slipped away during my lunch break to meet with a private investigator. His name was Rick, a gruff, no-nonsense type who came highly recommended by a friend. "You're sure about this?" Rick asked, leaning back in his chair. His office was cluttered with file boxes and old coffee cups, but his eyes were sharp. "Positive," I replied, sliding a folder of printed texts and credit card statements across the desk. "I need you to get me proof. Photos, videos, anything concrete." Rick flipped through the folder, nodding. "Shouldn't be too hard. You've already done half the work. Give me a week, maybe 2. I left his office feeling both relieved and sick to my stomach. This was it. I was taking the first step toward uncovering the full truth, but it felt like I was tearing apart my life in the process. Back at home, Lisa was as cheerful as ever. She greeted me with a kiss, asked about my day, and told me about a new restaurant she wanted to try. I played along, pretending everything was fine. But every time she smiled, every time she laughed, I saw the messages. I heard her calling me boring. I pictured her with Chase, sharing secrets and stolen moments. I was a man living a double life, one part of me pretending to be the loving husband, the other plotting my next move. Lisa had no idea what was coming. The first step was simple: act normal. If Lisa sensed even the faintest hint of suspicion, she'd lock down tighter than a vault. So, I smiled when I didn't feel like smiling, laughed when I wanted to scream, and complimented her when I wanted to ask her why she was destroying everything we'd built. "Dinner smells amazing," she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter as I stirred a pot of chili. "It's your favorite," I replied, forcing warmth into my voice. "Figured I'd treat you." Her smile in response was genuine, or at least it seemed so. I wondered how often she'd worn that same expression for Chase. I upped my efforts, playing the attentive husband to perfection. I planned a weekend getaway for us to a cozy cabin in the mountains. Lisa agreed, though her enthusiasm seemed slightly muted. I brushed it off, pretending not to notice. "You're really spoiling me lately," she said as we packed our bags. "You deserve it," I replied, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Meanwhile, every free moment I had was spent on the trap I was setting. Rick, the private investigator, was worth every penny. He was discreet and relentless. Over the next few weeks, he provided me with a steady stream of evidence: photos of Lisa and Chase meeting at a small cafe downtown, walking hand in hand through a park, and, most damning of all, entering a hotel together late one night. The photos were high quality, each detail crystal clear. Chase's smirk was unmistakable, a smug expression that made my blood boil every time I saw it. In one picture, he was holding Lisa's hand, her head tilted back in laughter. It wasn't the laughter itself that stung, it was the familiarity of the scene. I had taken Lisa to that same park during the early days of our marriage. Rick didn't stop at photos. He dug into their spending, uncovering receipts for extravagant dinners, jewelry, and even plane tickets. All of it was paid for with our shared accounts. "You've got enough here to blow this wide open," Rick said when we met in his office. He spread the evidence across the desk, a damning mosaic of betrayal. What's the plan? I stared at the photos, the receipts, the texts Rick had managed to extract from her phone. The plan is to make sure they don't see it coming. Rick chuckled. You're playing this close to the chest. Smart. Just don't let it eat you up too much. Easier said than done. At home, Lisa continued her routine, completely unaware that every move she made was under scrutiny. She left for work in the mornings, texting Chase before she even reached the office. I knew because Rick had installed software on her phone that mirrored her activity. One text stood out. Lisa, I can't keep this up much longer. I think he's starting to notice. Chase, relax, babe. He's clueless. Just keep smiling, and we'll be fine. That was the moment I decided it was time to strike. The night of the dinner party arrived, and I could feel the tension in my chest building as I set the table. Lisa flitted about the kitchen, laughing lightly as she garnished the appetizers. She looked radiant, as if nothing could possibly be wrong. If only she knew. We'd invited 8 guests, a mix of Lisa's friends and a few of mine. It was the perfect cover for what was about to happen. Lisa had no reason to suspect that the evening would end in anything other than wine, laughter, and idle gossip. Did you remember the wine? She asked, glancing at me over her shoulder. Already chilling, I replied, keeping my tone light. As the first guests arrived, I played the role of the doting husband to perfection. I poured drinks, complimented everyone's outfits, and laughed at all the right moments. Lisa was glowing, basking in the attention of her friends as she shared stories about work and travel. The doorbell rang about an hour into the evening. Lisa was in the middle of a story about a recent work trip to Chicago, a trip I now knew she hadn't taken alone. I'll get it, I said, setting my drink down and heading to the door. When I opened it, there he was. Chase. He looked exactly like the photos Rick had shown me, tall, athletic, and exuding that overconfident swagger I'd come to despise. He was clearly confused to see me but quickly masked it with a polite smile. Hey, is this the right place? He asked, holding up the invitation I'd sent. It sure is, I said, stepping aside. Come on in. Everyone's in the dining room. As Chase walked in, his eyes scanned the room, landing on Lisa. Her expression shifted from cheerful to pale in an instant. The color drained from her face so quickly that I almost worried she'd faint. Chase. I said loudly, drawing everyone's attention. What a surprise. Lisa, did you know he'd be joining us tonight? The room buzzed with awkward laughter and murmurs as all eyes turned to Lisa. She stood frozen, her glass of wine trembling in her hand. David, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't let her finish. I raised my glass, forcing a smile. To my wife, Lisa, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. 12 years of marriage, and I thought I knew you. The room fell silent. But it seems you've had your hands full, quite literally, with Chase. Gasps rippled through the guests, followed by stunned silence. Lisa's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Don't bother, I said, setting my glass down and reaching for the folder I'd placed on the sideboard earlier. I held it up for everyone to see. I have everything I need right here. Every dinner, every night at his place, every dollar you spent of ours on him. Chase's confident demeanor faltered. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. Hey, man, this is all a misunderstanding. Oh, don't worry, Chase, I said, cutting him off. I took the liberty of contacting your wife. His jaw dropped, his face draining of color. You what? Didn't think I'd find her, huh? I continued, my voice cold. She sends her regards, and this. I pulled out a copy of the divorce petition his wife had filed, courtesy of Rick's digging. Seems she's not as understanding as Lisa hoped I'd be. The room erupted into chaos. Lisa stammered incoherently, tears streaming down her face. Chase stood frozen, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Lisa's friends exchanged horrified glances, some whispering to each other. "You don't have to do this here," Lisa finally managed to say, her voice cracking. "Actually, I do," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "You didn't seem to have a problem parading around town with him, using our money to fund your affair. So why should I keep this private?" Chase made a move toward the door, muttering something about leaving, but I stopped him. "Not so fast," I said. "We're not done yet." He froze, turning back to me with wide eyes. "What else do you want?" "I want you both to understand what you've done," I said, stepping closer. "You didn't just betray me, you betrayed the life we built together. And now, you're going to deal with the consequences." I turned to Lisa, whose tears had turned to silent sobs. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer tomorrow. The divorce papers are already drawn up. The house is mine, and you can figure out the rest." Her sobs grew louder as she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "And you," I said, turning back to Chase, "might want to start looking for a new job. I hear your company doesn't take too kindly to scandals like this." Chase glared at me, but he didn't say a word. He knew he was cornered. As the tension in the room reached its peak, I looked around at the stunned faces of our guests. "Well," I said, picking up my drink and taking a long sip, "I think that about wraps up the evening. Thanks for coming, everyone." Without another word, I turned and walked out the front door, leaving Lisa and Chase to deal with the wreckage. The party was over, literally and figuratively. The moment I stepped out of that house, the crisp night air felt like a balm on my frayed nerves. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Behind me, the chaos continued. Through the open window, I could hear Lisa's sobs mingling with the awkward murmurs of our guests. Someone whispered something about leaving, and there was the distinct sound of shattered glass, probably Lisa venting her frustration on the wine glasses she'd painstakingly picked out last year. I didn't care. Let her cry. Let her clean up the mess she made. Chase was the first to flee, slipping out the back door like the coward he was. He didn't say goodbye or even try to salvage his dignity. One of Lisa's friends, ever the opportunist, snapped a picture of him as he darted into the shadows. Good luck explaining that, I muttered to myself, knowing the photo would undoubtedly make its way to his boss, or his soon-to-be ex-wife. I walked to my car, the manila envelope tucked under my arm. Inside were the divorce papers, freshly prepared by my lawyer, along with a detailed accounting of every cent Lisa had drained from our accounts. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The next morning, the fallout hit full force. Lisa called me at least a dozen times before 9 a.m. Her name lighting up my phone in rapid succession. I didn't answer. I didn't have anything left to say to her. When her calls went ignored, she switched to texts. "Lisa, David, please. Let's talk. Lisa, I made a mistake. I was stupid. Don't throw everything away over this. Lisa, I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just give me a chance." I deleted each one without responding. By noon, she showed up at my office, her makeup smeared and her eyes red from crying. My assistant, Sarah, intercepted her before she could make it to my desk. "Mr. Anderson's in a meeting," Sarah told her firmly, though she shot me a questioning glance through the glass door. "I'll wait," Lisa said, her voice trembling. I sighed, gesturing for Sarah to let her in. There was no point in dragging this out. Lisa entered the room hesitantly, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. She looked disheveled, a far cry from the polished woman who had charmed Chase and his ilk. "David, please," she began, her voice cracking. "I know I messed up. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start fresh." "No, Lisa," I interrupted, my tone firm but calm. We're not starting fresh. We're not going to counseling. This is done. She stared at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't understand. After everything we've been through, you're just going to walk away. I slid the manila envelope across the desk. Inside are the divorce papers. You'll find everything's already been signed on my end. There's also a detailed list of the expenses you racked up during your affair. The house? You can keep it, but I'm selling it. Oh, and the accounts? Frozen. You'll need to figure out your finances moving forward. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope, scanning the contents. You're serious. As serious as I've ever been. Lisa broke down then, sobbing uncontrollably. She dropped into the chair across from me, burying her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I don't know what I thought. That much is clear, I said, leaning back in my chair. But this isn't just about what you did. It's about what you destroyed. Our marriage, our trust, the life we built together, you threw it all away. And for what? Chase. A few months of excitement. She shook her head, her voice muffled by her hands. It wasn't like that. I wasn't thinking straight. I felt trapped. I laughed bitterly. Trapped? Lisa, we had a good life. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix what you thought was broken, you ran to him. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered, looking up at me with pleading eyes. But you did. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Lisa finally stood, clutching the envelope to her chest like it might save her. What happens now? Now? I said, meeting her gaze. Now you figure out how to live with the consequences of your choices. Because I'm done. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Lisa moved out of the house, though not without a few parting jabs about how I was throwing everything away. Chase, meanwhile, disappeared entirely. Word had gotten out about the affair, and his wife filed for divorce almost immediately. Rick had sent me an update, complete with a photo of Chase's desk being cleared out at work. I didn't feel triumphant. Not really. There was no joy in watching my life fall apart, even if I was the one holding the wrecking ball. But there was satisfaction in knowing I had stood my ground, refused to be a victim. The hardest part was explaining everything to friends and family. Most were shocked, some offered awkward condolences, and a few admitted they'd suspected something was off with Lisa for a while. Better to find out now than 20 years down the road, my friend Mark said over beers one night. At least you can start fresh. Yeah, I replied, though the thought of starting fresh felt daunting. One evening, as I sat in the now empty house, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, it was all still there, but it felt distant now, like a bad dream I was slowly waking up from. Lisa's final message sat unopened on my phone. Lisa, I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me. I didn't delete it. Not yet. Maybe someday I'd read it, but for now, I needed space. The fallout had been swift, brutal, and unforgiving. But as I stared out the window at the setting sun, I felt lighter. Sure, my heart was broken, but there was peace in knowing I'd taken control of my life again. Lisa and Chase had underestimated me. They thought I'd crumble under the weight of their betrayal, but they were wrong. I was still standing. And that, I realized, was enough.